friends. Welcome back to the Resilient Life Hacks podcast. I'm your host, Liz Myers, and today we have with us Katie Corbett. She has a master's degree in community health education, and she's a certified health educator. And we have in common that we both have 8 kids that we homeschool. And she is here today to talk to us about our health and how we can get some life hacks in that area so that we can stop being frustrated by health issues and learn to eat for the right reasons the right way. So I'm so excited to hear what you have to share with us. Thank you for joining us, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my passion, is just helping women kind of get over this so they can just go live an awesome life and, get beyond that struggle with the yo-yo dieting and everything. So, because that was me for 30 years, I think I struggled with yo-yo dieting, and I'd go to the playground with my kids, and I would be, wondering, like, why can't I lose weight where, like, this mom over here just had a baby last month and she looks amazing and she's already back in her pre-pregnancy jeans, and here I am, I have a master's degree in health, and yet this is so elusive for me. It felt so hard. So after I had my 7th baby, I found myself 70 pounds overweight. A friend had just finished an Ironman competition, and I was so excited for her. We had cheered her on, and we had watched her progress throughout the whole day. And I don't know if you or your listeners are familiar with what that is, but it's intense. I think it's a 2-mile swim, then a 110-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon. And you have to do it within a certain amount of time or you don't become an Ironman. But she did it, and it was fascinating to me. And so we were so excited, and we were cheering her on. But the very next thought I had was jealousy. And I'm not a jealous person, but I really was like, well, it must be nice to have so much free time that you can just go for a bike ride for hours. And I didn't know at the time, but what I was feeling was just a lack of self-care. I didn't even have a hairbrush. I just would grab my daughter's hairbrush. I really put myself on a back burner, but I would meet my needs that I had by eating. And that was really the only form of self-care that I actually knew how to do, but I didn't even know that that was what I was doing. It just felt like at the end of the day, the bowl of ice cream or the cookies or the chocolate, it like felt so irresistible to me. And that was the way my brain was trying to get me to, like, this will calm you down. This will help you relax. Or, like, I don't know about you, but in our house, 4 o'clock would get crazy loud. Like, it just gets the dial of volume. I don't know why, but it's just the dial gets turned up. And then I would always go grab a handful of chocolate chips. Like, that was just, my brain was like, it's not dinner yet, but you are hungry. So go grab some chocolate chips, and that's what you should go eat. That sounds like a great idea.
Well, it's like a reward for surviving a day of homeschooling a bunch of kids. I can totally relate. When we first, connected, I saw that the title of your website was Health, Wellness, and Chocolate. And I'm like, I've got to speak to this woman because you're a certified health educator. I'm a certified chocoholic. So
well, there we go. Yeah, we were meant to be, right?
Yeah.
Well, I named it Health, Wellness, and Chocolate because I really wanted people to understand, because I love chocolate too. And I wanted people to think, I think sometimes we feel like there's a spectrum of health, right? But it's all or nothing, especially if you diet a lot. You feel like I have to eat perfectly or I have to eat everything in sight. Like, there's no middle ground. So I wanted to convey the message of, like, you can have health and wellness, but you can also have chocolate. But you just have to understand why you want it so badly. Or is it just a substitute for almost anything else in your life? Like, if the happiest point of your day is when you can sit down and have something delicious to eat, that might be a red flag for you, that, like, hey, life's out of balance a little bit. I'm really not taking care of myself in any other way other than just feeding myself. And that might just be the season you're in. And that might be the only way you are getting any needs met, is just having that little break of time. So my goal was really to help people realize, like, where are the gaps in your life, and let's fill them up with living as opposed to just eating. And then if you are overweight and you struggle with your weight, that will really take care of itself. And so that's what I had learned when I started after my friend had done the Ironman competition, and I felt jealous. It was a wake up moment for me. And I'm like, okay, I really need to start doing something for my health. But the thought of another diet, I was like, I just can't. I was felt like impossible to me. And I just felt like I just don't want to be hungry all the time. I don't want that. I don't want another diet. They don't work. I would try, like, I mean, I tried everything and for years. And I would try pills, I would try shakes, I tried juicing, and I made it to like 10 a.m. and then I cried and I ate a banana. Like it just was impossible. And so like, you know, I tried separating out the carbs and the fats and, you know, all the things I tried. And then I just was like, I'm not doing that. I have a master's degree. I'm going to research and figure out, why is this so impossible? What are the people that have sustained weight loss? What do they do? And like start to learn about that and see, what am I missing? Something's missing that I'm not doing. It's not dieting, because that's not working. And so I gave myself a year of grace. I'm like, I'm not going to diet. I'm going to figure this out. And so during my year of grace, I learned a lot about emotional intelligence. And one of the main takeaways I learned was people who are overweight tend to score low on emotional intelligence, which means they probably were, you know, they were raised maybe in a home where they didn't learn how to cope very well with their feelings, or maybe their parents didn't know either. And so in order to feel better, they learned very early on, if I eat something, I'll just feel better. And your brain really just wants to keep you alive and keep you happy. And so it will find the shortest cut it can, and then it'll just tell you to do that over and over again. So you really might feel biologically hungry after a stressful day, and you might even say like, no, my stomach is actually growling, but it's actually your brain sending the hormones out saying it's time to eat, because it knows like if you eat, you'll feel better. And that it's not, your brain doesn't necessarily do what's best for you in the long term, but it will do what it thinks you need right now, you know? And so once you can start you know, kind of paying attention to that and kind of calling your brain out, like, wait, I know I'm not hungry right now. And saying, I think something else is going on, and then start learning about what actually is going on behind the scenes of your brain. Like, well, why do I feel stressed right now? What else is happening? So for me, going back to that 4 o'clock example, the kids would be really loud, and it was just a weird time of day. It wasn't quite dinner, definitely not bedtime. We finished schooling, so I was really tired. And I would feel guilty because I wanted this many kids. I wanted the lifestyle of homeschooling. So I felt guilty for feeling overwhelmed. Now I know, like, I feel overwhelmed because I care, and it is a hard job, right? Like I could give myself that grace, but then I didn't get that. I just felt bad. And then because I felt overwhelmed, I felt guilty, and eating chocolate chips made me feel better. So learning, like, okay, I feel this way and I'm eating the chocolate chips, like, what else could I do instead that would help me feel really good and support me in these long-term health goals, but that I could do instead in this season of my life? And I just started going outside with them at 4 o'clock, and it sounds really easy. Like, why didn't I think of this before? But I just didn't. And so now every day at 4, I'm outside. The kids play in the yard. You know, I have a 2-year-old and I have a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, like, so they're little, you know, but they can play in the yard, and we have a driveway that goes in a circle and it's off the road, so they can be riding their bikes, and I literally walk around my circle and I put a podcast on. And so being outside, getting fresh air, moving my body, like, that helps me decompress just as much as eating those chocolate chips did. So I really just had to find a substitute that felt just as good to me. And then when I would come back inside, when it was time to cook dinner, I felt that relief. I felt de-stressed. And so it was really learning, like, what else could work for me that would help in the long term rather than always turning to food. And after I started doing this, I lost over 60 pounds, and I didn't diet. I didn't feel deprived. I actually became more of the person who I wanted to be, because I learned how to take care of myself. I learned how to get needs met without using food. And, you know, there was so much more than just the weight. And I teach my students now, you know, extra weight is just a symptom of life out of balance. And if you can learn how to balance it out, the weight will really take care of itself. Like, you probably won't be able to eat, you know, handfuls of chocolate chips all the time, but you won't feel deprived about it, right? Because you'll understand the why behind the desire to do it. And then once you can kind of go through that, you'll feel better and you won't need it. The pull for that won't feel so strong anymore.
I can relate to so many things of what you're saying, of just that feeling guilty of feeling overwhelmed because it's like, I want this, but some days it just feels a little too much to handle. And I've done similar things, but I've always thought of, I'll replace chocolate with some other healthy food, which doesn't work. I read somewhere that if you crave a lot of chocolate, you're deficient in something, I forget what it is, but green peas have that thing. And I'm like, I'm not going to reach for green peas when I'm hungry for chocolate.
Right. But
what I like about what you're saying is you're kind of going even deeper than the food level. It's not replacing that food with a healthier food, like, I'm going to eat carrot sticks now.
Right. Because that's not going to satisfy you. Yeah.
Right. You're replacing that with a healthier activity, which I can totally relate to. We just moved out to the country, and like my new de-stressor right now is I just sit in my lawn chair and I watch our baby chickens. They are so cute and entertaining. And I feel so light after it sounds simple and almost ridiculous, but it works for me.
Right.
I was reading through some of the things on your website, and I'm fascinated by the idea you presented of we have two stomachs, and one's real and one's lying to us. So can you elaborate on that a little more?
Sure. Yeah. I touched on it really briefly, but we'll go a little deeper. So remember what I was saying with your brain, its job is to kind of keep you safe and keep you happy and make sure that you're not like too stressed. Okay. So it will send out chemicals. And so you basically have these two stomachs. You have your phantom stomach and your biological stomach. So your biological stomach, when you're actually biologically hungry, hunger comes on slowly. It will come on in waves, and it might dissipate a little bit, but then it might come back again. And it's usually like after about 3 to 4 hours after you've last eaten. So you'll feel like, okay, I think it's probably getting time for lunch, or I could really go for something to eat soon, but it's not urgent. So your phantom hunger, or like this second stomach, that's the emotional stomach. Okay. So when you have some sort of unpleasant emotion that you're experiencing, or that your brain just doesn't want to deal with, all of a sudden you're going to feel hungry, or just maybe out of habit. So for example, when I would pull up my driveway, because we always had little kids for 20 years, I would pull up my driveway and it would be time to feed them, like, because whatever it was, we'd be out for the time being. And so whenever we got home, it was always like time to eat. And once I learned this, I ran to the post office, which is only 5 minutes away. And I came home and I pulled up the driveway, and I actually like heard the thought in my head, like, okay, it's time to eat. And I was like, wait a second. No, it's not. But I actually did feel like my stomach growl a little bit. And I was like, wait a minute, this is fascinating. Like I never had that connection before. But then once I learned this, I was able to say, like, I know I'm not actually hungry right now. I think it was just habit. Like it was just pulling up the driveway was my brain saying, okay, this is what we do next, right? Because your brain wants to conserve as much energy as possible. It uses a lot of energy when it has to work. So it automates as much as it possibly can. And one of the ways it automates is to have an emotion or habit, and then it will short circuit and say, okay, I'm going to tell you that you're hungry because I know how to solve this problem for you. You're hungry. So what you need to do really is start paying attention and knowing, okay, is my hunger coming on slowly in waves? Will an apple or those carrot sticks actually satisfy me? Like, am I actually looking for nourishment, or am I looking for the chocolate? Am I searching the fridge, looking for something very specific? Did I just see a commercial about a juicy burger and that's what I have to have? Or, like it's something usually really specific. If it's like that phantom hunger, it's going to come on so fast. You're going to want it. It's going to feel urgent. And then usually if you do go ahead and eat it, you're going to feel guilty shortly thereafter. You're going to have regrets about it. So those are kind of like the ways you can kind of identify, like, are you emotionally eating using that phantom stomach, or are you genuinely hungry and you want to go ahead and find nourishment for yourself? So if you are genuinely hungry, you might want like a salad with grilled chicken, and, like that might sound really good to you. Or if maybe it's chilly outside and you want a hot bowl of soup. But if it's, that phantom hunger, it might just be, I need to have this chocolate cake right now, or it has, whatever it could be for you. But like that's kind of how you can tell the difference, and how you're using food is this phantom hunger, your two stomachs, really.
Yeah. That's great. And that's, I like how you broke that down for us, where we can identify those. I've also heard sometimes when we have hunger pangs, we're actually thirsty.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I always try to, if I'm craving something, I try water first, and sometimes that just fixes it. Sometimes it's like, oh, I was actually thirsty, but my brain just was confused on what I wanted. Or
Sure.
I've noticed sometimes it's like, oh, I want this, whatever. And then I think, well, what if I did eat something healthy? Well, I'm not that hungry.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not actually hungry. I just want that sweet thing for
Yeah.
whatever reason. But I
Yeah.
recently learned, this fascinated me, that we have more neurons in our gut area than we
Yeah.
do in either our peripheral nervous system or our central nervous, like our spinal cord. Um, either one of those independently, and that there is actually a lot of thought, if you want to call it that happens in relation to our gut. And you think of that's where like the seat of our emotions are. And so those things actually are biologically more entwined than I ever realized.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And if you aren't attuned to it, like, so you're with the central nervous system too, I've been reading a lot about it as well. And if you are constantly someone who's very anxious, you've actually like thrown it off a bit, right? So you kind of almost have to get that back in line. And then you can deal with the weight. But until you kind of deal with the other stuff, the weight really is secondary almost. And I know it feels so urgent to want, like, once you decide, like, oh no, I have to lose it, and like you feel like it's so urgent, and no, you don't understand, I really have to get this weight off. But it's like, if you don't do the hard work of actually figuring out what's going on behind the scenes, and how you're using food, the weight will just come back on, because life happens, and how you do some things is usually how you do all things. So you might be able to white knuckle your way through a diet and maybe even get close to a goal weight, but eventually the old habits will creep back in, because your brain loves automaticity, and it will just love to always just do for you what it always has, and so eventually you'll get tired emotionally and mentally of fighting that, and your brain will always win out. And so you will just fall back on those old habits again if you haven't learned how to change them and understand why they happened and how they cropped up in the first place.
Right. It's like trying to swim upstream. You could do it for a while, but when you're tired or, you've had a bad day, you're going to fall right back into it. And then that follows with the guilt, which makes it all worse and doesn't help the situation.
Right. And then if you have that diet mentality of this all or nothing thinking, you think, well, am I eating perfectly and I'm on this diet and I'm doing so well, but then life happens, and it happens for everybody. And if you're not really learning how to cope emotionally and only using food, all of a sudden you're going to have that cheat food and be off your diet, right? Because now we're only thinking in black and white terms. And now you're going to say, well, I'm going to give myself permission to eat whatever I want. Since I already blew the diet, I'm just going to go ahead and eat my way till Monday, and then it's like, well, Monday becomes like, I'll just wait till the new year. And then, and so it's kind of like, if you can get rid of the all or nothing terms and think more of like, okay, well, what does my body need right now? And give yourself more grace about it too. Like, I did have a hard day and I would like some chocolate, and then allow it, right? But like, come from a place of empowering yourself. Like, okay, I'm gonna have a piece of chocolate, but like, don't gobble it then. Like, sit down, have a cup of tea with it or whatever, and like, enjoy it and savor it and taste it. And like, don't get like the cheap chocolate. Like, go ahead and get the best quality chocolate you can afford, so that it's really an event for you. Put it on a beautiful plate, sit at the table, you know what I mean? Like, make it like something that's wonderful for you to do, as opposed to something that you would feel guilty about. Like, be intentional if you're going to have it, and totally give yourself permission, so that there's no guilt, there's no, oh boy, I really blew it, now I'm going to just have the rest of the bag, or it's like, go from a different perspective, and do it that way.
I first became aware of that kind of concept. We were reading, for homeschool, we were reading some read aloud that was a historical fiction, and it was set in the World War II era where chocolate was really limited. And it was a group of children. I can't even remember which book it was, but they divvied it up, into little small pieces, and then they savored or they would save it for several days. And I was like, wow, here I am, a chocolate lover, but I just scarf it down so fast. I'm like, did I even taste what I I was just craving? But I that idea of, if you're going to have it, like, actually enjoy it, like, be in the moment with that. And what has really frustrated me as I try to figure out, the best way to eat healthy is the experts don't agree My friends don't agree. Everybody
Mhm.
has their, oh, this is the way that you need to do it, and this worked for me, and this worked for
Yeah.
millions, and this will work for you. And I
Right.
tried that thing, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work for me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it gets frustrating because you're like, oh, it's this thing. No, it's this thing. Well,
I
if I cut out
know.
this, or if I eat more of that, and
Mhm.
it really can get overwhelming and
Yes.
confusing.
Yeah, so what I do, I actually don't give a diet plan to the clients that I work with. What I tell them to do is basically by the time they get to me, they have tried everything and they really probably know what works best for them. Like, oh, I know if I eat low carb, I'm really tired and I feel sluggish. Or I know if I have high fat, I don't feel good either, right? Like, so they kind of know. And so what I do is I say, whatever you eat, give yourself permission to eat everything. There's no off limits. But what I want you to do, and this is really the root of it, is changing your relationship to food so that you don't feel like you're on a diet. But whatever you do, you're going to write down what you eat 24 hours ahead of time, and then you're going to stick to it for the next day. And the reason I have you do this is because when you write down what you eat 24 hours ahead of time, you use a region of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. And that is the part of your brain that it's in charge of like your values, long-term thinking. You can make decisions with your goals in mind. And so when I have you write that out, you're writing from that place, right? You're considering your goals. You're considering like who you want to be in the future. So you're kind of thinking of your future self and thinking, okay, if I wanted to lose 60 pounds, what would I need to eat today that's going to nourish me, that's going to give me the energy I need to get through the day? You're going to consider, okay, I have we have church on Wednesday night, so I'm going to make something in the crock pot, and it's that way we're not grabbing fast food. Like, you're going to consider all of this on Tuesday morning when you're writing out your plan for the next day, and then you're going to stick to it. And that is where the hard work comes in, is just sticking to your word. Because when you diet over and over again, you really do erode your self-confidence, and you tend to kind of go back on your word to yourself. And a lot of times too, you're probably a people pleaser, and so you have no problem serving everybody else. But when it comes to you keeping your word to yourself, a lot of times you won't. So this really trains you to have to keep your word to yourself. But at the end of the day, when you have stuck to that eating plan, it does build your self-confidence, and it builds your self-efficacy, and you start believing in yourself, like, I can do this. And you were able to have that piece of chocolate if you wanted it, because you planned it 24 hours ahead of time, because you're planning it from that prefrontal cortex, as opposed to, so the region of your brain called the limbic system, that's the part of your brain, it's kind of like the reactor part of your brain. That's the part that's like, let's just eat it. What the heck? We're just going to have it. This is going to be great. Like, no regrets. Like, we're all in with that, with those fries. Let's go, But it's like, what, have the fries, but plan it for tomorrow. And then you might find, if you give yourself those 24 hours, you might find like the allure of that is kind of gone. Like, that urge to have it has dissipated. Or maybe you decide, no, Saturday night is date night, and I'm going to have dessert when we go out to that restaurant, and I'm going to plan it, and I'm going to taste it and savor it and really enjoy it. And what you'll start to notice is you start to up level the treats that you have. You're like, that doesn't taste good to me. Like, that birthday cake or that candy tastes waxy. I don't want it. And so I struggled so much with it with blizzards from Dairy Queen. That was kind of like my thing,
Those are good.
Yes, and there was never a blizzard too big for me, right? Like, I just wanted the whole thing, and it was chocolate with Reese's peanut butter cups, and I could devour that, and I would still want more. Like, there was never a big enough blizzard. And when I finally did this during my year of grace, and I planned ahead, and I said, okay, I'm going to have a blizzard on Saturday when during our date night. And I got it, and I was like, I'm just gonna like pay attention to it instead of gobbling it down, and I'm gonna taste it and really see if I like it. And so I did, and it wasn't cold. The candy tasted waxy. I was beyond stunned. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was like, what? This doesn't even taste good. And so I didn't have all of it either. I wound up throwing some away. And I'm telling you, I would scrape the bottom of the container, like trying not to get the wax from the plastic, but like I would scrape it. And I was able to throw it away. And so it was just like calories I didn't need, but it wasn't deprivation. It was more like, I don't really like this. I'm going to find something I actually do like, and I'll have that instead. And so it wasn't hard then, the next time they wanted ice cream, to be like, I'm good. I really don't want any. And that was irresistible to me before. So to me, to be able to say that is really powerful. But it was like, it doesn't taste good. And so I'm going to wait and I'll have something that does taste good. And that was like just these little tiny shifts helped me get the weight off without really feeling deprived. And it was really those little tiny tweaks and getting to know, okay, what do I like to eat? And paying attention to it and really taking the time, being tedious with your food and figuring out like, I don't actually like this. Or, when I notice when I have bread, it hurts to walk later on. Like, what's that about? All these things where if you're just in a rush or eating on somebody else's meal plan or eating someone else's like diet plan that they determine for you, the amount and the quantity and the quality of it, you don't learn that about yourself. So really it's kind of an internal look inside and like, okay, what gives me energy? What don't I like? What do I like? And learning that through this whole process too. And that really does help with that self-efficacy, that belief in yourself, like, okay, I can do this. And that will snowball. You'll be able to do it. And then it just becomes who you are then. So like Katie now, I don't sit on the couch at night fighting the urge to have some dessert. It actually doesn't cross my mind anymore. Like, it's just not part of who I am. Dessert doesn't call me the way it used to, and I don't get me wrong, we'll still have it once in a while, but it's not like this powerful urge of like, I need to have this because I deserve it. I made it through another day. And so now I have to have it because this is the only happy time of my whole day. Right. Like there's a shift now.
You're not in bondage to it. It's more like a tool that you use deliberately.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the key is definitely being intentional about things. I had a similar experience to that when I was in college. One day I just realized, you know what? I don't even like soft drinks. I don't like the carbonation. It's too strong. And so I just kind of quit drinking them, and they're really not much of an attraction to me. Occasionally I'll have one and then I go, oh yeah, that's why I don't like those.
Yeah.
That's why I don't drink those. And the same, like I said, I'm a chocoholic. So to me, like if a dessert or a candy or something, I'm like, if it's not chocolate, I'm not going to waste the calories on it.
I'm the same way.
I'm not into the fruity stuff. I want the chocolate stuff.
Me too. Yeah.
But I haven't done the planning. I've done menu plans for like the family for the dinner for the weekend.
Yeah, sure.
Not for myself personally, but I have done a food log, where you write down what you ate.
Yes.
And
you do it after though? Like you do it after, right?
Yeah, or kind of during, which was very revealing to me because sometimes I would be like, well, I don't want to eat that because I don't want to have to admit in my journal that I ate it.
Yeah.
I don't want to record it. Or I don't feel like writing that down. It's so tedious. So if I don't want it bad enough to write it down, then I really don't want it at all. It was just a habit I was reaching for. Yeah. For me, it's that mid-afternoon lull when I'm like, okay, I need something to keep going so I can finish the day.
Yeah, definitely.
So definitely, I think, being intentional. I'm big on being intentional about what we think.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true or it needs to be there.
Exactly.
I really like how you're expanding this into not just what we think, but what we feel and how we feel about food and what we eat, what we put in our bodies, and being intentional about all of those things is definitely rewarding. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I've learned so much. I know that our listeners have. Please let them know where they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more or if they want to get coaching from you on this.
Yeah, sure. So you can head over to healthwellnessandchocolate.com, and that's my website. And I offer a free printable. It's 14 healthy meals that you can make in 30 minutes or less that are, family friendly. And so I give you a grocery list, and then I give you the meal ideas that you can do along with it. And so you can get that for free right on the website. If you just go to healthwellnessandchocolate.com, you can grab that from there. And then I'm on Instagram. It's at Health Wellness Chocolate. And again, on Facebook, Health Wellness and Chocolate.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much. And just before we sign off, I thought of another question while you were just talking, but because we're both mothers of lots of kiddos, how do you instill this kind of thought process or this thinking towards food into the next generation so they don't have the struggle that we've had? How can you start them off well from the beginning?
Okay, so I noticed for my own kids, whenever I said, "All right, guys, it's time for school," they'd be like, "We're hungry." I'm like, "No, you're not, because I just made breakfast." Because, like, I don't know about you, but, like,
Yeah,
especially with homeschooling, the kids are always hungry, right? Like, they
they're
have
always in the
first
kitchen.
breakfast, they're hobbits, right? Like, they have
Right,
first
they
breakfast,
are,
second
that's what we
breakfast.
talk about. I wanna get one of those kitchen closed signs, like,
Yeah, first lunch,
so
second lunch,
right,
almost dinner, say
yeah,
first dinner. But, yeah, so what I started doing was because once I learned this, then because I grew up in a home of emotional eaters, so I didn't know, and, like, they taught me how to feel better was through food, right? So, like, I did that for the first 10 years, 15 years of my, being an adult and having children, and so once I learned this information, I was like, "Okay, and I started noticing, I would tell some of my kids, like, "Okay, guys, it's time for school. Let's get started." And they'd be like, "No, we're hungry." I'm like, "You're not hungry. I think you just don't want to do school." And so your brain's like, let's get something to eat, because that's definitely more fun than
mhm,
than doing
yeah,
our schoolwork right now. So it's just noticing some of their
mm,
habits. Or I'd be
mhm,
like, let's we'll have that. We'll have a treat, but let's wait until, Sunday.
mm,
We'll have dessert, but why don't we have something special when we go to the corn maze? You know what I
mhm,
mean? Like,
yeah,
we'll not constantly have it, or
right,
we call it a sometimes food.
yeah.
So for
In our
us,
family, it's a lot, at bedtime. Time for bed, but
right?
I'm hungry, and there's that
Yeah.
mom thing of, I cannot send my child to bed hungry. What if they really
Uh-huh.
are hungry?
I know. I do struggle with that too, but I'm like, "No, we had dinner and you don't need
Uh-huh,
to eat right now, like, dinner's over and,
mhm,
that's it." Or if maybe they didn't, like, so sometimes they won't like what I make for dinner, and then I'll like, "Okay, well, you can have a banana or you can have an apple."
mhm,
But, like, that's it, the kitchen's closed. This isn't you're not gonna It has to be something, like, that will nourish you then if you're that
right,
hungry for it, and that's it,
mhm,
and that's what I'll allow. So,
mhm,
it is hard because especially you do have that mom guilt, like, "Oh, I can't send them to
yeah,
bed hungry, like, what am I gonna
right.
do?" But
Yeah, but
usually,
I think really, in our culture in America today, we really don't know what it really means to be hungry,
that's so true.
too, and so I have to, remind myself of that as well, but I've
Mhm.
really enjoyed chatting with you. I know this has been a
Yeah, thank
blessing to our
you.
our listeners too.
I
Thank you
hope
so
so.
much,
Yeah, thank you
and,
for having
I
me.
will put all those links that you mentioned in our show notes so that people can reach out and get a hold of you and learn more from you.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Yeah,
much,
I would
Katie.
love that. Thank you. Thanks for
Mhm.
having me. Take care.